Ace Frehley, the man whose screaming guitar riffs defined the sound of an entire generation, was gone. The original spaceman of Kiss, the mystery behind the makeup, and the soul of the band's explosive energy had played his final note. It didn't feel real. For decades, Ace wasn't just part of Kiss. He was the heartbeat of their rebellion, the spark that made stadiums tremble. And yet on a quiet Thursday, surrounded by family and his closest brothers in music, his journey came to an end. Reports revealed that Ace had suffered a tragic fall inside a recording studio, a place that had witnessed his genius countless times before. The accident led to a severe brain bleed. He was rushed to the hospital, placed on life support, and for a moment, fans around the world held their breath, praying for a miracle. But miracles don't always come. And when his family made the heartbreaking decision to let him go, Ace left this world the same way he lived in it, surrounded by love, loyalty, and the echo of his music. The shockwave that followed wasn't just about losing a musician. It was about saying goodbye to a founding force, the very man who helped invent one of rock's most iconic bands. And yet, in those dark hours, something powerful happened. The people who knew him best, who had lived through the chaos and the glory with him, came forward to honor the man behind the legend. But that was only the beginning. It all started with a single headline that no one wanted to believe. Ace Frehley, legendary Kiss guitarist, has passed away at 74. Within minutes, social media exploded. Fans from every corner of the world were posting the same disbelief. Please tell me this isn't true. But it was. The man who once turned every stage into a rocket launch pad had taken his final bow. According to reports, Ace was in the studio, his second home, working on new music when tragedy struck. He slipped, took a serious fall, and suffered a severe brain bleed. For days, he fought silently on life support, while those closest to him stayed by his side, refusing to give up hope. His longtime friend and bandmate, Peter Criss, was there, along with Ace's wife and family, keeping vigil in the hospital room. And then, the news no one wanted came. His family made the impossible decision to let him go, peacefully, surrounded by love and music, just the way he would have wanted. When word spread, the silence that followed felt deafening. Rock stations paused their playlists. Kiss Army fan pages turned black in tribute. For many, this wasn't just the loss of a rock icon. It was the loss of a childhood memory, a symbol of a time when music felt untouchable. Even the band's official channels went dark for a moment, as if the world needed a breath to absorb what had just happened. Ace Frehley, the first original member of Kiss to leave this world, was gone. But what made this loss hit even harder was the fact that Ace wasn't just a guitarist. He was a piece of rock history that could never be replaced. And while fans mourned, his brothers in Kiss, Peter Criss, Paul Stanley, and Gene Simmons, were already preparing to speak from the heart. Because for them, this wasn't just news. It was personal. Long before Kiss became a global phenomenon, before the pyrotechnics, the makeup, and the madness, there were just 4 hungry dreamers in a New York rehearsal room. And one of them was a lanky kid with wild hair, a sarcastic grin, and a guitar that sounded like a thunderstorm. His name was Ace Frehley. Back in 1973, when Ace joined Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Peter Criss, no one could have predicted they were about to change rock forever. Together, they created not just a band, but a brand, an identity, a revolution in leather and lightning. Kiss wasn't just about music. It was about escape. And Ace? He was the spark that made the rocket fly. His persona, the spaceman, wasn't a costume. It was an extension of his soul, eccentric, unpredictable, electrifying. When he hit the stage, smoke and sparks shot from his guitar, as if the universe itself was plugged into his amp. From Detroit Rock City to Shock Me, Ace's sound was the secret ingredient, raw, wild, and dripping with rebellion. His solos weren't just notes. They were a statement that rock had no limits. But behind the flashing lights, Ace's journey with Kiss wasn't always easy. Fame came fast and with it, chaos. Creative differences, personal struggles, and the grind of nonstop touring began to take their toll. Yet even through the storms, Ace remained a cornerstone of what made Kiss. Kiss, and when the band exploded into global superstardom, selling out arenas and defining an entire decade, fans didn't just cheer for the group, they cheered for the spaceman. The one who made every riff sound like it came from another planet. It's no exaggeration to say that Ace Frehley helped write the DNA of hard rock. His guitar tone, his swagger, his attitude, countless musicians grew up trying to imitate it. But no one ever truly could. He was a legend built from distortion and stardust. And now, his legacy stands as one of the purest examples of what rock and roll was meant to be. Loud, fearless, and unforgettable. But the people who knew him best, the ones who stood beside him on that wild ride, had even more to say when they lost him. And no one spoke more personally than Peter Criss. When Peter Criss finally broke his silence, it wasn't through a flashy statement or a PR post, it came straight from the heart. On his official website, Peter shared a message that instantly broke fans' hearts. He revealed he had been right there with Ace, alongside Ace's wife and family, when his lifelong friend took his final breath. "I was with my brother," Peter wrote simply, and that one line said more than 1,000 words ever could. For decades, their relationship had been more than just bandmates sharing a stage. Peter and Ace had gone through everything together. The late-night gigs in smoky clubs, the endless tours, the chaos, the fame, the fallout. And even after years apart, when the band's paths split and the spotlight faded, that brotherhood never really died. In his tribute, Peter didn't just remember Ace as the spaceman, he remembered the man behind the makeup, the funny, sarcastic friend who could make anyone laugh even in the darkest times. He wrote, "As a founding member of Kiss, and in Ace's solo career, he influenced and touched the hearts of millions. His legacy will live on in the music industry and in the hearts of the Kiss Army." It wasn't a goodbye filled with regret or bitterness. It was the farewell of someone who truly understood what it meant to share a lifetime of music, madness, and memories. Peter's words painted a different picture of Ace. Not the wild rock star the tabloids loved to chase, but the loyal, passionate musician who gave everything he had to the art that defined him. And even though Peter himself had walked away from the spotlight years ago, in that one heartfelt post, he reminded the world why Ace mattered. Not just to Kiss, but to every person who ever picked up a guitar and dreamed of becoming a star. But Peter wasn't the only one remembering him through tears and nostalgia. Another founding brother, Paul Stanley, shared his own emotional farewell, one that brought fans right back to the early days of Kiss. Paul Stanley's tribute hit differently, quiet, nostalgic, and full of the kind of emotion that only comes from decades of shared history. Instead of a long statement, Paul chose a single photo, an old snapshot of him and Ace, laughing like time never touched them. Underneath it, he wrote a short memory about the man who once stood beside him through the rise of Kiss, recalling how no one could make a guitar scream the way Ace did. It wasn't polished or performative. It was raw. The kind of post that stops you mid-scroll because it feels real. Paul remembered a night early in their career when Ace walked into the studio, picked up his guitar, and played something that left everyone speechless. "He made magic out of electricity," Paul once said in an interview. And that magic never faded. The two hadn't always seen eye to eye. Fans know that. Their creative clashes and personal differences were no secret. But in that moment, all the noise from the past disappeared. What remained was respect. Pure, unshakable respect. Paul didn't talk about the arguments or the fame. He talked about Ace's spirit, the guy who would crack a joke right before a sold-out show, the musician who turned chaos into melody, the brother who carried a piece of the Kiss dream with him wherever he went. It was clear through Paul's words that, despite everything, Ace's presence had left an imprint that would never fade. The laughter, the music, the madness, it was all part of a legacy that still echoed in every note Kiss ever played. And while Paul's tribute brought fans to tears, the band's official statement, shared by both Paul and Gene Simmons, would take that emotion to an even deeper level. When Gene Simmons finally spoke, the words carried a weight only a lifelong friend could express. That night, both Gene and Paul released a joint statement to TMZ, and for the first time in years, their message sounded unified, heartfelt and stripped of ego. "We are devastated," the statement began. Ace was an essential and irreplaceable rock soldier during some of the most formative chapters of Kiss and its history. No theatrics, no filters, just raw truth. For a band built on fire, explosions, and noise, this silence, this shared heartbreak, said more than any pyrotechnic ever could. Gene, who had shared countless tours, recording sessions, and unforgettable nights with Ace, called his passing the end of a chapter that defined who we are. Behind the scenes, insiders said Gene was hit especially hard. Their relationship had been complex, built on friendship, tension, competition, and mutual admiration. But beneath all that, there was a bond only true bandmates could understand. Gene often credited Ace's creativity for shaping the band's earliest sound, the raw, unfiltered energy that made Kiss different from everyone else. Their statement wasn't just a public farewell, it was a tribute from brothers in arms who had walked through fame, fortune, and chaos together. It was as if the band that once painted their faces to hide their identities had finally dropped the masks and spoken straight from the heart. As tributes began pouring in from across the rock world, that message from Gene and Paul set the tone. It reminded everyone that before Kiss became a brand, it was a brotherhood, and now that brotherhood was mourning one of its own. But the Kiss family wasn't alone in their grief. All across the music world, artists, fans, and legends began to speak out, because Ace Frehley wasn't just a band member. He was an icon whose influence reached far beyond the painted faces of Kiss. The moment the news hit, the entire rock community lit up with heartbreak and disbelief. Within hours, timelines filled with tributes, bold concert photos, and stories from people who had grown up idolizing Ace Frehley. From veteran rockers to new-age metal bands, everyone seemed to have the same message: there will never be another Ace. Slash from Guns N' Roses shared a throwback photo of the two of them backstage, writing simply, "Rest easy, spaceman. You changed the way I saw the guitar." Dave Grohl called him the bridge between rock and outer space. Even younger artists, people who weren't even born during Kiss's prime, paid tribute, saying Ace's solos were the reason they ever picked up a guitar. Radio stations across the U.S. went into tribute mode, spinning Shock Me, Cold Gin, Detroit Rock City, and every Kiss anthem Ace had ever electrified. For one night, the world felt like it was back in the 70s, guitars roaring, lights flashing, and millions of fans remembering what rock once felt like when it was dangerous. Fans online began sharing clips of Ace's most iconic moments: the guitar that shot sparks, the live solo that sounded like it came from another planet, and his signature laugh that always broke the tension during interviews. Comments poured in from fans calling him the real heart of Kiss and the man who made noise sound beautiful. But perhaps the most powerful reaction came from fellow musicians who had shared the stage with him. Many recalled how Ace treated them not as competition, but as comrades. He'd offer advice, share his guitar secrets, and remind everyone that music was supposed to be fun, not a war. Even critics who had once doubted Kiss's theatrical style admitted that without Ace's raw authenticity, the band's success story would have been very different. And as the night wore on, one thing became clear: this wasn't just grief over a musician's passing. It was a collective mourning for a piece of rock history, a reminder that the wild, fearless energy of the 1970s, the era Ace helped create, was fading, one legend at a time. But while the world was mourning, those closest to Ace wanted people to remember something else: that his story wasn't just about how it ended, but about everything he left behind. For Ace Frehley, legacy was never about perfection. It was about impact. He didn't just play rock and roll. He embodied it, Every note he bent, every solo he tore through, every spark that flew from his guitar, it all came from a place of pure, untamed passion. Long before the streaming era, Ace was shaping the dreams of kids who stood in front of their mirrors with cheap guitars pretending to be him. His spaceman persona wasn't just an act. It was an invitation for fans to believe that music could take them somewhere else, somewhere bigger than life. Even after his years with Kiss, Ace's solo career kept that same fire burning. His self-titled debut album went platinum, his riffs still carried that signature cosmic edge, and his name continued to echo through generations of guitarists. He wasn't just another rock star, he was a symbol of rebellion, humor, and authenticity in an industry that often forgot what those words meant. Despite the fame, Ace never tried to polish his rough edges. He was honest, unpredictable, and human. The same guy who could shred in front of 50,000 people and then crack a joke backstage like nothing had happened. That's what made fans love him. He wasn't trying to be perfect. He was trying to be real, and that's why, even in death, Ace Frehley feels immortal. His riffs still ignite arenas. His face still smiles from vintage posters. His influence still lives in every power chord played by someone who dares to dream loud. For Peter, Paul, and Gene, and for every member of the Kiss Army, this loss isn't the end of a story. It's the continuation of a legend. Because Ace didn't just help build Kiss. He built the bridge between fantasy and rock reality, and then invited the rest of us to cross it with him. He may have taken his final bow, but the music, the attitude, the spark, they'll live on forever. Because when a true rock icon leaves this world, they don't fade away. They just turn up the volume somewhere higher. Rest in peace, spaceman. The stage is yours again, among the stars you always came from. As the world says goodbye to Ace Frehley, it doesn't feel like the end of a story. It feels like the echo of something eternal. His music, his laugh, his wild unpredictability, they've become part of rock's DNA. You can still feel him in every stage light. Every screaming guitar solo, every fan who paints their face and raises their hands to the sky. Ace didn't just leave behind songs. He left behind a feeling, that raw, electric rush of believing anything was possible. For decades, he turned chaos into art and noise into something that made millions feel alive. Paul Stanley once said that Kiss was never about being ordinary, and Ace was living proof of that. He turned every performance into a moment, every mistake into magic, and every dreamer into a believer. And while tonight the lights may dim for the spaceman, somewhere out there, maybe far beyond the stars, and another stage is lighting up for him. Because legends don't die, they just change stages.